The first time I became really aware of a more full sort of response in Baltimore was going to the Target that afternoon and seeing it wasn't completely picked over, but I could see this major dent in all of the cleaning supplies and the paper goods. And that felt like a kind of bellwether moment. And so I could feel collectively Baltimore starting to get hip to what was about to come our way.
For us, we actually had the ability to see what was going on in other parts of the country and sort of see what was coming. And our mayor actually did a shutdown, stay-at-home order faster than some of those other places did based on what was happening in those other places. But what was going through my mind, I was just heartbroken, like for these artists, for all these people who were suddenly out of work. We did everything we could to make sure that folks felt taken care of. So yeah, it was just like surreal and scary too, because at that time we didn't really know all of the things that we know, and frankly, we still feel like we're really on shifting sands and at sea with how to actually think about moving forward with all of the exciting programming that most of my colleagues and myself have been working on for the last, sometimes years.
And I always say that great art comes out of great relationships. And so for me, the news of the shutdown and what this meant for our community was, I had sadness for what that meant for those relationships. Artists weren't going to be able to share their gifts. Staffs weren't going to be able to come together. Tourists weren't going to be able to see their shows that they were looking forward to seeing. It's just, we're part of a larger community. And so it's not just about what was happening in New Haven specifically. For me, I was thinking about all of my colleagues and friends really across the country and around the world, where we were going to have to weather a storm that's unprecedented.
Yeah, so it was very interesting for us in the Midwest because in some ways we still felt a bit like we were in a bubble. We were watching very closely what was happening on both coasts, the West Coast, seeing what was happening there with theaters shutting down, and then the move to the East Coast as Broadway shut down. We had designers, there were international designers on the world premiere musical, and two of our designers were flying in for Germany and were not able to make their flight because of the travel ban. And we had designers who were in New York who couldn't make it as well. Schools were being shut down. They had to get their children out of their college campuses in 2 days because, the campuses were being closed. And then the other designers were coming in from both coasts, and the energy that came in and the sense of the dawning reality of just how big this pandemic was instantly permeated the bubble.
Right around the time that it became clear that we were going to have to leave our building, postpone and cancel our shows, and temporarily abandon the live theater adventure, that's right around the time that the rest of the industry started, putting a flood of content online, as did we. And there was something about that felt totally right, and yet something felt like it was missing. So I started to percolate on an idea around what would it look like for people to read plays at home, and who are the people who are trapped at home, and who are they trapped with? So that idea started to form in my mind, something around an intergenerational, family-friendly, bite-sized opportunity to read a play. And I called my dear friend and colleague, Manuela Goyanes. We are part of a cohort of artistic directors of color in our first season right now. So Jacob Padrón and Hana Sharif and Maria and I have been hanging out quite a bit over the last 18 months. I called Maria and said, I have this idea. Is it crazy?
Steph and I were talking, and she had this great idea about these micro commissions. And we actually hopped on the phone with Oskar Eustis to sort of, dig into that idea a little bit more.
They called me up and they said they wanted my advice. Now, for an old guy like me, talking to two women who I've mentored and loved deeply, being told they want my advice is just an incredibly successful way to get me to pick up the phone and answer. And as soon as we were talking, oh no, they didn't want my advice. They wanted to rope the public into a project that they were already planning. They had conceived Play at Home, absolutely separate from me. And all I did was honestly what I used to do when they were on staff too, which is say, I'm in. What do I have to do?
And he said really smart things like just make it simple and clean and clear what it is that you're doing. So it's eminently achievable and you can feel successful having done the thing.
And we talked about it and we sort of poked holes in it, and we called Hana and Jacob and we talked about it some more.
How can we use this moment to really galvanize our communities and do something to stay connected to our audiences?
It just felt like a really exciting way to start our journey into the unknown, which is how do we keep connection? How do we help elevate the humanity of our communities? And how do we keep art alive during the time that people are feeling scared and alone and isolated?
We decided to pursue the idea of Play at Home, of micro commissions for playwrights to write plays that were fun and joyful and really meant to be read by just families at home.
Ding dong. There's a note. Hi, this is Carmen from next door. Please enjoy these sugar-free chamomile and rose cookies and a warm serving of Earl Grey tea latte.
That's nice of her. Cookies! No, we shouldn't have any more sugar. And I think we have enough for the day.
Well, it says it's sugar-free.
GUADALÍS, who is a phenomenal playwright and actor, was on our stage this year in Luis Alfaro's Mujer Amadía in LA. And when we were thinking of the playwright, she was at the top of the list.
So one of the things that I never have time for in New York is to cook. There just isn't time to cook. I mean, you can throw things together, but actually put a meal together, that takes time. And I grew up with a mother that would come home from work and she would cook for us. She would cook rice, beans, meat, or, other Dominican dishes. And it wasn't until now that I'm like, oh, I have time to cook. I would cook. And I'm like, my mother did this every day. Oh my God. But one of the dishes that I kind of tasked myself to cook was the oxtail dish, which is in the play. So I was like, you know what? I have the time. I'm going to cook oxtail. And it was very good. I was very proud of myself. And then I got an email from Bex and asking me if I wanted to be part of the micro commission. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to write. And I'm sitting here eating oxtail. And then I was like, wait a minute, I could do this. And I have a picture of my grandmother who passed away years ago that I had a very close relationship with her. So it was kind of like looking at the oxtail and then looking at my grandmother. And I was like, I know what I'm going to write.
Oh, thank goodness you're here.
Miss Santana sits and takes in the smells of the broth.
Bon appetit.
Oh, will you join me?
I don't want to risk getting you sick or...
Have you been outside in the last couple of weeks?
No.
Washed your hands and did all the things you're supposed to?
Yes.
Please, stay.
Carmen smiles wide.
I'd love to.
Miss Santana gets 2 plates and 2 spoons. She serves Carmen a plate.
Your mother was very special.
I couldn't give a crap about the students. I'm talking about my children, my crayons. 17 out of...
Ryan Haddad's play, in which childhood art implements actually become embodied and personified, from a box of crayons to a glue gun to glitter is so creative and so delightful. And part of what is so fun about it is imagining the million different ways it could be performed. Because of course, like any group, this group of childhood art instruments has rivalries, competitions, friendships, bonds, struggles, tension, drama. And who would have thought that the handing of a crayon to a box of crayons at the end of a play would bring tears to my eyes.
Glitter and Bee is a basically Toy Story for art supplies, in which the occupants of an abandoned art classroom of an elementary school come together for a group therapy circle to express their sadness and disdain for having been abandoned by the humans that are now being homeschooled by their parents. This is the paintbrush Patty speaking to the box of crayons Bee, who has just been muzzled by the glue gun. And Patty says to Bee, "And for the record, Bee, you have no room to talk about needing others to make you pretty. You are a box.
A cardboard box. You take all the credit for the colors inside you and the art that they make, but without them, you would be truly nothing. Nothing but a box."
One of the first writers I thought of when we were thinking about who to commission was Donetta Lavinia Grace. We were in the middle of taping her production of Where We Stand for Baltimore Center Stage so that we could air it virtually. And so I had to have Donetta on the list of commissioned writers.
It took me about 3 or 4 days to really write it. What was fun was that I was just kind of like anything goes, right? So I was like, what would be cool? Everything is, what would be cool? What would be cool? Let's throw that in there. Let's throw that in there. Let's throw that in there. And of course, I grew up with Soul Train, right? So I knew the format of the show pretty well. And I, of course, knew Midsummer so well. And like these sort of ridiculous love situations paired themselves really well with the deep, flowery love of 70s soul and and love songs and R&B.
Now, what I want to know is, how did one family get all this talent? And so foxy, too.
You are too much, Phil. Mom and Dad, they had us singing since we were kids. Well, most of us.
Right. Yes, this may be your 5th album, but this is the first one with you, Moat. Am I right?
Sure enough, Phil. I am just so blessed that I finally get to join my sisters on this one. I can finally, give you what I need, yeah.
And you know what? We are so blessed that Moat sacrificed sharing her amazing voice on this particular album, saving it for our next project.
Here are the mighty, mighty mechanical singing Break It On Down to brighten up your day.
There ain't nothing about this groove that can get on down. Just get on down. Ow.
I called Mike Liu. I accidentally called his home number or his wife's number, and Rahana picks up, and I hear the kids in the background, and she's like, "Mike is going to go pick up diapers right now." He's braving it out in the world. And I was like, "Oh, well, then I'll just call him back at some other point because, you all are busy and stuff like that." And she was like, no, you can go ahead and call him. He'll pick up, etc. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, they have 2 kids under the age of 5. How are they handling this moment? I mean, they're heroes.
I think that something that is really charming about a good short is that it could only have been written under the conditions that the prompt gave the writer. And so, so I wanted to make it located sort of in the world of COVID, but also just kind of specific to what I knew people would have at home and be able to do. And I think that in addition to having it be something that parents could do with their kids to just sort of pass the time. Like I would love for people to try shooting it and just seeing kind of like whether you can pull that off, like having child actors and having like water and electronics, and just like it's like a smart ass response to something that I feel, you know, like that's like happening right now.
Do you need an extension?
Okay, Zeke, what I need is for you to stop pretending that you are my manager. Because I am your mother, which means I'm your boss.
Well, I'm your boss.
That's funny because I'm your boss.
No, I'm your boss.
You know what? That's so interesting because I'm your boss.
Actually, you know something really funny? I'm your boss. Actually, I think I was your boss.
Look, Logan, for better or for worse, we live in a capitalist society, and capitalism means I have to earn enough money to feed you and to clothe you and to make sure you have shelter. That's my job. I may want another job.
I mean, with the proxy, I mean, Lauren is just so, the thing that I think sometimes people don't always pick up on is she's so hilarious. She is such a fun writer. I mean, I think her comedic ear is so spot on. And I just think that her imagination is so expansive. I think that she really gets at the heart of the human condition. And I always love that her plays are grounded and in the kind of complications of family dynamics. So I think the proxy is such a great window into her artistry.
I live in New York City. I'm still in New York City, and that the majority of my family lives very far away in San Francisco. And I think more than anything else, the one thing I miss is just being able to easily visit them. That I'm one of those people who probably goes home 3 or 4 times a year. And I remember always thinking, it doesn't matter that I live in New York, because I can like hop on a plane anytime and I can see them, you know, because I get to determine my schedule as a freelancer. And I feel like coronavirus has taken that supposition and said, is that really true? And so in a way, I think the proxy is my way of working through what it might mean to not be able to visit them so easily, to say, I don't know when I'll get to see them next or share that same space. And, you know, there is actual distance between New York and San Francisco. And I think for the first time in my life, having to like actually feel that.
Voice. And when you're done, when the dinners have been had, when you've made a small but sizable dent in clearing out the closet where they put all your stuff.
You've got 5 garbage bags of things to donate to Goodwill. That's when you come back. An extended but never quite long enough trip.
It's a lot to remember.
It is.
I think that this moment has to change how playwrights tell stories. It's interesting. I see online all the time people advocating like, please don't write a COVID story. Please don't write anything about this moment. It's terrible. We don't want to see stories about it, but it's inevitable. You're going to write the things that you experience. You're going to write what was hopeful in this moment, what could have changed the fantasy of this moment, the exact moment. You're going to write around it. The perception of normalcy is probably going to shift. So your base of storytelling, that normalcy that was however many months ago, is going to shift. All the stories will change because this moment will be a consideration in that.
What I love is that the imaginations of these writers allow us to escape into worlds we couldn't have conceived before. And there's a challenge and joy and wonder in that.
It doesn't replace those theater experience of watching a show, but I think that it absolutely can help folks feel really connected to why they cared about theater in the first place and the spark that drew them to the theater in the first place. And the more that we can make our field, our art form visible and feel connected to folks in this tricky time, the better.
I think Play at Home is an offering to whoever is out there who would like to make some theater, professional or not, has ever done theater or not. that I think Play at Home is an invitation and a reminder that you can make things wherever you are.
I also hope that we can continue exploring what making theater means. We've been doing theater pretty much the same since Shakespeare's time and before. So I am really excited to see how we can continue to do theater differently.
Figuring out how to decenter the artist in the act of making theater, to blur the lines between who gets to make theater and who gets to watch theater, to increase participation in the theater, the feeling that people own the theater because they get to make the theater. They don't just get to watch it and consume it. That is something that I know we're going to keep doing after we're removed from this quarantine in the AC after Corona life. How we keep doing it, whether it's in this exact form or whether the form mutates once we're allowed to congregate together, it's hard to say. But this is one of the few ideas that I think really has staying power.
I think the invitation to continue to be innovative, to break boundaries, to really kind of invite more people to the party, I think that doesn't have to stop after COVID-19. And I think what I love about Play at Home, the design of the initiative is such that like the work can continue and that theaters can continue to commission the playwrights within their own communities. And so the hope is that as you go to playathome.org, that the roster of plays, it just continues to grow.
And if, you know, the whole American theater can get 10 people each to write short plays or more, then we'll have this giant catalog, and what we can do with those when this is done is a really exciting prospect.
I hope that what we are demonstrating with Play at Home is the collective resilience of the American theater and the fortitude of our artistic imaginations. I hope that people reflect on this moment and see Play at Home and read these plays and laugh and think, look, they managed to make these small plays with gigantic imagination.